VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. We are going to have our second episode after the trade, what we're calling it now. We think there'll be a second part of it. Who knows if that'll be tomorrow or 5 weeks from now. But we are here with OVF, Optimistic Vikings Fan, the guest of the hour. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I'll like you mentioned, I'll be better once that second trade happens.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's your second time on the show, and you picked a wonderful time.
To
come on this whole week. We were going back and forth, OVF and I, thinking like, God, the time is so perfect for you to come on the show because we had this whirlwind of events. In a regular week, just signing Andrew Van Ginkel would be a big deal. But then we had 6, 7 signings altogether, plus the trade that fell out of the sky. So we're going to jump into all of that right now. Brevin, I'm going to let you have the first thing for OVF. What do we got?
Yeah, so after the trade yesterday, I feel like we've all kind of we're jumping that it's to the conclusion that it's going to be Minnesota. So I feel like we're all sold on Drake May, and that hopefully with best case scenario, we're thinking he's the quarterback. So I didn't know if you had anything different, what would be your best case scenario and also your worst case scenario for the Vikings post Texans trade for the draft?
I mean, if we want to go all in on best case scenario, I think it's that the Bears fuck up again and don't go Caleb. Right. But that's not going to happen. So I agree that May is best case scenario. I would say worst case scenario is probably trading to making the mistake of only trading to 5.
Yeah.
And then having someone like the Giants trade to 4 and all 4 quarterbacks are gone.
Oh God. I hadn't even really thought about that. Gross.
And that's why you have to trade to the top 4. I really think that the Patriot, or I'll even include Washington, New England, and Arizona are the only people I'm contacting right now. You need to get in that top 4. Mm-hmm. JJ McCarthy I believe you want me to talk about him later, but he's definitely in the conversation. I think he's plan B. I feel like JJ is kind of being I'll settle for him. But I think you have to go all in. I forget it was who the GM's name, to be honest with you, but the GM of the Bills, I think, summed it up perfectly when he said, I'm going to go all in. And if people say I gave up too much and it hits, then no one's going to care. And if it doesn't hit, I won't be here. So It doesn't really matter. And I think that's got to be Kwesi's outlook. Just go all in, and I don't care if you give up future picks at this point. It's something the Minnesota Vikings have never done. I don't think it's a coincidence that we've never won a Super Bowl and we've never drafted a QB in the top 10. So let's just give it a shot. Something new that we haven't done before.
That's what that was Brandon Beane from Buffalo who said that.
Yes.
And before he had that quote, when I started to endorse this plan, once I realized after the Achilles injury to Cousins that what the future was, I thought that was his last play as a Viking. I started to advocate for the trade. I had a pretty similar story. I always say where we're at right now, if you trade the farm for Drake May or Jaden Daniels, nobody's going to care about the price if the guy turns out to be the franchise quarterback for 10 years. And then even if he is Ponder-esque or just mediocre, by the time the picks start to come back, that's when we're going to realize it. And so that era will have been lost anyhow. And, if you have to trade 2 firsts or 3 firsts or whatever it is, once we make the determination in the Vikings that, hey, JJ McCarthy didn't work out, well, that's when all your picks are coming back anyhow. So you're going to be starting fresh. That's where I come from. So I'm glad that Brandon Beane kind of had that quote because it put it in perspective that there's a lot of folks that are skittish. As soon as Cousins signed with the Falcons, it just drove me nuts that the immediate dialogue was, oh, looks like we're going back to Christian Ponder. And it's like, why do you have to think that way? Like, just because that guy wasn't good and that was a big swing and the miss, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen again. In fact, in the way that I think, maybe everybody doesn't think this is, I would be emboldened to do it again because it can't be like that again. We're destined to be a little bit better than that. So that's where I'm at on the trade. And it was so cool that it fell out of the sky on Friday. It gives us 5.5 weeks to figure out what the hell they're going to do with it, assuming they go all the way to draft night.
But you mentioned that, I don't think they go all the way to draft night. I'm honestly surprised it hasn't happened yet. I don't think you make the trade to 23 unless you already had something set up. So what's been alluded to is maybe even there's some connections between Kwesi and Arizona. And so what's been alluded to is there's already been that handshake deal. Like, hey, this is going to happen. We're going to try to get to 3. We're going to try to get to 2, but we have this deal. We'll probably overpay for 4, but let us try to get 3.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense that there would have to be, especially the timing of it, that there would have to be a second part almost guaranteed, because otherwise you're really getting risky.
Well, yeah, the other thing that I've thought about too is someone like a team like New England or Washington probably don't want to move down all the way to 11. So there could be some sort of 3-way deal being maneuvered to, get the Chargers or something like that, who are definitely seem to be kind of giving up on the offense a little bit, and give them some more opportunities in that first round, give them 11 and 23, get up to 5, and then do 5 and the futures for 3 or for 2, or something like that.
Interestingly, I don't know if this will come to fruition, but it dawned on me this week, accidentally, in fact, that the Commanders general manager spent 4 years with Kwesi in San Francisco. I think we're convinced that the Commanders are going to be set on Jaden Daniels because of what the sports books say. But those 2 guys, I think, let's see, Adam Peters was the vice president of player personnel, and that's where Kwesi came up. So if they're not, so those 2 at least should be acquaintances, if not friends. My next question,
I also think that, sorry, really quick, I really think that we're all sold on Jaden Daniels to Washington as well, because of the Mariota signing. I think that you want that style of offense to be similar, and Jaden Daniels kind of fits that same style of offense that Mariota does. That's why I'm personally sold on that's who they want. Obviously could be wrong because Drake May does, is mobile as well. But it definitely seems like it's a Jaden Daniels kind of style offense.
Yeah, that signing pointed me. That's kind of why the Bills keep bringing Trubisky back, because he's the ultimate diet Josh Allen, and I think there is credence to that theory. And then they also got rid of Sam Howell, so it looks like they're clearing everything. I want to ask you about free agency now. So far, in the last 5 days, Jonathan Greenard, edge; Andrew Van Ginkel, edge. These are all newcomers to the Vikings. Eden Prairie native Blake Cashman, Sam Darnold, quarterback; Parker Romo, kicker; Aaron Jones, running back; Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle; and Trent Sherfield for wide receiver. So I want to know, from your opinion, Ian, what should Vikings fans reasonably expect from free agency starting, tomorrow or Monday? Like, is there going to be a couple more things, or is this about it?
I think there will be a couple more things. That cornerback needs to be addressed somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily a big signing, but someone's probably going to come in at corner. What I've been saying all along is don't expect someone that was a free agent to be signed. Expect it to be a cut player, because Kwesi wants those comp picks, and you don't want a signed free agent to count against that. So I'd look at, if you want the big names are probably Xavier Howard and Trey White. Those would probably be the big 2 names that I'd be looking at, and hopefully Xavier Howard's connection to B-Flow helps a little bit, get him on board for a cheap deal. But I think that we're fairly close to up to the cap by my calculation. I know it's all flux because you don't really know how some of these deals are structured. But kind of from what I've seen, we're at about 8-9 million in cap space. And right now our picks, this was before the trade, so I haven't done the calculation since the trade, but before that trade up to 23, our picks were calculated at about 11 million to count against the cap. So that could be different now. Obviously it will be different now. Probably it could be potentially even more, but then again, if you're making another trade to go higher, it's going to change things as well. But I would estimate that the rookie signings would be anywhere from 9 to 11 million. And so you probably need to make a little bit more cap space. There's some restructures that could happen and things like that. So I'd look towards that, just hoping that we can get another corner on board. And I would prefer like a vet and not like just a depth signing. That's just my preference, because I do think what that room needs is a strong voice. to help those young guys out.
Brevin, this whole offseason now, we're 10 weeks into it. I've looked at cornerback, and it hasn't been as urgent as the need for me as it is for others. Not because I think it's all good and we're, it's badass, but it's there's young bodies there between Caleb Evans, Andrew Booth, Byron Murphy's still somewhat young, and Mekhi Blackman, who I thought was really good as a rookie. So, Brevin, do you agree that Xavier Howard would fit? Because if you're going to bring in a dude who's labeled to start, then that means one of those guys is gone, or at least going to just be on the bench, like Andrew Booth kind of has been. So, what is your read, Brevin, on cornerback, that they can stand to add Xavier Howard and say sayonara to Booth, or Booth, you're on the bench again? What do you think?
No, yeah, and Xavier Howard is the really easy connection to make because of his time with Brian Flores in Miami. So I guess I kind of voiced my opinion on Caleb Evans yesterday.
That was you, right?
He's kind of like, I don't want to be disrespectful and call him Cam Dantzler, but I like Caleb Evans brings at the line of scrimmage. He's not afraid to tackle and get in and blow up a play. Big of a fan in coverage, so I don't want to get rid of him, but seeing any of these corners go, Booth was a completely different player toward the end of the season last year than we had accustomed to. He was actually playing snaps, so that was really, really cool to see. Byron Murphy, of course, that's going to be your corner one or corner two, depending on who you sign. So I really wouldn't be opposed to that. With Flores, you can kind of hide your corners, and we saw that a lot last year. They were actually a really good pass defense until they figured out at 3 p.m. Eastern against the Cincinnati when it just all went to shit. So, no, I'm married to any of these corners. Of course, they're young guys, but they can all take something from an Xavier Howard or a Trey White. Maybe both those guys aren't currently quite in their physical prime as NFL players, but I'm excited for what they've got in the corner room, but you need something. Brian Flores is a very, very good coordinator. He's not a miracle worker, and I think we got as much miracle as we could with him last year with the personnel that they had.
And now with all the wide receivers in the NFC North, I think you have to look at that room even more. That room's going to have a magnifying glass on it with all these wide receivers that are here.
And it ranked 32nd per completion percentage allowed. And so assuming they did nothing more by the way of a high draft pick or signing Xavier Howard, you'd realistically hope it got better with the same guys, and going from 32nd to 25th would be good by that definition. That's what you would expect if it was the exact same guys, unless this Jonathan Greener and Andrew Van Ginkel were just absolute gods and could enforce this pass rusher, or they signed Calais Campbell or something.
I will say Brian Cashman is better in coverage than any linebacker we had last year. So there's that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Brevin, we stepped on your question here by the way that Ian responded. Do you want me to ask my next one while you think of one on the fly, or do you already got one ready for Ian?
I kind of got one ready.
All right, let's hear it.
Draft. So I know we're kind of hopping between draft, free agency, and draft, but
that's all right.
So we mentioned the worst case scenario, and it was really good that you mentioned it. That I'm a McCarthy guy, and we'll find out whether you are or not in a couple minutes. But I'm a McCarthy guy. Before this trade, realistically, I thought there's a chance for May, but you're gonna have to dig in deep to your future. Realistically, I thought McCarthy was it. That was the prize. But now after this trade, McCarthy's your floor, and that's why I think it was such a good trade.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking he's the worst case scenario. And I think we kind of talked about this yesterday too. I think the worst case scenario personally is sticking and picking and Michael 23. I think that's I turned in my fan card.
I agree that's not a good scenario, but I think I'd prefer that than going to 5, thinking you're getting one of the top 4, giving up all these picks, and then getting jumped.
Absolutely, yeah. So with that, if they were in this reality or in this unreality, this parallel universe, who would you want to see them draft at 11 and 23?
Well, I think you have to get a quarterback at one point, so you probably are hoping that like a Michael Penix falls to 23. I know you just have to hope that those medicals turn out, and the reason Michael Penix worries me as well too is he flips your offense too. How are you going to handle Darisaw? How are you going to handle Brian O'Neill because he's a lefty? Like it just kind of flips that offense, and we don't know how those two players are going to play specifically with a left-handed quarterback. But then I think you're probably looking at the top corner. We're talking about corners here, or even beef up that edge room even more. But you're probably looking at defense at 11 because that's probably the best defensive player in the draft will fall to 11 because it looks like it's offense straight for the first 10 picks. So at least there's that. At least you can beef up that defense. I don't want that. You could theoretically go defense on both picks and really beef up that and beef up that defense and hope that you get maybe a high pick next year. But I personally hate the quarterback class next year. It's putrid. Please don't do that. It's really bad. Shedeur Sanders is probably the best of the bunch, and I'm not a fan. He's just a name. Like that's why he's going to get drafted high is because he's Deion's kid. So I'm not wanting that at all. I do agree that JJ is hopefully the floor for what this trade means. But I do like JJ. I do. I do think it's still settling a little bit. And I'll be honest with you. I think actually JJ would be a better starter day one than Drake May. Drake May will probably take a little bit of work, but his ceiling is much, much higher than JJ McCarthy's. Completions percentage is a big thing. And I think when you look at pressure situations, the situations that when you need a first down, when you need the drive to continue, JJ McCarthy is one of the best college players I've seen at that ever, actually. His third down completion percentage, his completion percentage under pressure, both are big positives for JJ McCarthy. So I'm not going to be like sad with JJ McCarthy. I might be slightly disappointed just because I feel like Drake May is a potential right now. If I knew for a fact that he wasn't in the realm of possibility, I'd still be stoked for JJ McCarthy. But I think just because he is in the realm of possibility, there'll be that slight disappointment.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Mainly because I told you off air, Ian, that when we flipped to the off-season calendar and I finally settled on my prediction that Cousins would be gone, my personal thing was trade up to New England and get Drake May. And that's because I always thought New England's roster was barren of talent. And it felt like a roster that worked for Belichick when he had Brady, and they somehow always got away with it to the tune of 6 Super Bowls. But right now, or at least heading into free agency, they needed 2 offensive tackles, an edge rusher, 2 wide receivers, and a quarterback. And I thought, well, the new regime is going to want to flip that into a bunch of draft picks because then they can start team building, kind of like the Bears did last year. And then some of the smoke said, no, they're going to start with a quarterback. And I was like, well, then my Drake May idea is not going to pan out. Well, now it feels relevant again because Tor Nystrom told us last week on this show that he's heard that New England doesn't love Drake May. And then, boom, we pull off the trade Friday. And so I'm right there with you that because the Vikings can realistically get the guy that I wanted them to get, then they hired the guy's high school coach on top of it. It feels like it's really real when it started for me as this pipe dream. So if they end up at 4 or 5 getting McCarthy, of course, we'll all be excited and we'll turn on the tape and then only look at the positive things. But here's this other thing. I think we'll end by asking you about running backs. But one thing, in your worst case scenario, where the Vikings are like, all right, we believe that we can get him at 5 with the Chargers, and then they're leapfrogged by the Giants or the Broncos. What do the Vikings just end up with Marvin Harrison at 5, or would they have to trade back and look like fools?
That's a great question. I think you go into panic mode a little bit at that point. See if you can, flip. Because you're saying, because maybe one of these, the Commanders, God, that went back. Throwback. Maybe the Commanders were like, when we were originally offering, you know, a 5 and a future or something, never thought that Marvin Harrison would be there at 5. So maybe now they're willing to do 5 and a future, and we can get Jaden Daniels. You know, like maybe, who knows? So I think you try to throw these Hail Marys, or even see if any kind of free or any kind of other team is like, oh my God, I'd be willing to give up my starting quarterback for Marvin Harrison. I don't even want to think about it. The other one that I don't want to think about it is panic mode, where you panic trade Justin Jefferson for Jaden Daniels for Drake May straight up.
Oh, I see.
And then take Marvin Harrison there. That is like absolute worst case scenario. I don't even want to talk about it because I don't think it's a smart move at all to trade a proven player like JJ. It's not. So yeah, I don't want to even talk about it. Let's move on.
That's why I've been irritated. Well, it's weird. This Jefferson trade shit has gone in waves where it really ramped up for the combine, and then Kwesi. Well, first of all, Kevin O'Connell said, "Not on this planet are we going to trade. We haven't thought about it on this planet." And then Kwesi like flat out seemed ticked that it was out there in the atmosphere. And then they died down for 2 or 3 weeks, and then free agency started, and Kirk's gone, and we started these all. But what ticks me off is some of the absurd, like, hey, well, they'll package Jefferson in this deal, and then we're also going to give them draft picks. It's like, no, because you know Jefferson's already on a Hall of Fame trajectory. We don't have to add shit to our trade.
Yep, exactly. What really ticks me off is that these same conversations aren't happening about CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
Same exact situation. Mm-hmm. And CeeDee Lamb is and that's my thing. I don't think JJ wants to sign until CeeDee Lamb signs, because he wants the highest paid wide receiver, which he deserves to get. Mm-hmm. The reason it's not happening is because the media wants CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. The media does not want Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. It's not good for them.
I see. All right, Brevin. Do you have one more thing for Ian? Because we already talked about McCarthy in the 2-parter question. You got one more thing?
I think you wanted to talk about running backs, right?
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on the show, but I was going to see if you had one other thing other than that. That was my fallback question.
Yeah, for sure. I think that signing Aaron Jones on just a 1-year deal is brilliant. It'll help your rookie quarterback, as well as, I don't know if you guys have looked into next year's draft class at all, but next year's draft class at running back is absolutely stacked. Okay. It's going to be one of the best running back classes that we've seen in a while. It doesn't have, like, Bijan is a different beast. Mm-hmm. So let's put that aside. It's not going to be a Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs kind of class, but it is going to be a really, really good class. Travion Henderson is probably headlining the class right now. I really like him a lot. So if you're looking at it that way, then it kind of also sets up for Aaron Jones to move on a little bit, and you draft a running back maybe a little bit higher, not as high as Jahmyr Gibbs was drafted. But you're looking at, but now you don't have a second.
We haven't processed that yet.
It takes a lot of processing. But you do have potentially 3/3 next year as well. So you're kind of looking at that. Maybe you can move up into the second with those 3/3 and maybe get a running back there. And then you have one of the best offensive units in the NFL that's all pretty much on rookie contracts, except for Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. So you're kind of looking at it that way. I think that that's where I'm looking at running back, at least. Of course, I think running back is a position that you always bring in a body that's a rookie. So you're going to get an undrafted free agent probably, or a late 7th pick for a running back. There's not a lot of names I like at the end of this draft. There's a lot of running backs I like kind of in the round 4 or 5 range, but I don't think we're going to go that direction now that we signed Aaron Jones.
Yeah, that one was surprising that Kwesi would get a running back who will be 30 in December. But I understand that it has to be fixed, and this is probably the safest bet solution to finally fix a running game, or to at least make it average, because we've scraped the bottom. And I will tell Vikings fans, if they do end up pulling off the second part of this trade and it involves more juicy draft picks, conveniently, they're going to have that $130 million next year. So as we dry our tears about not having next year's blah, blah, blah picks, well, you're going to have the by far the largest cap penny bank that we've ever had, let alone in the last 10 years during the Spielman-Zimmer all-in era. So you will have that to ease your pain. That
a little asterisk on that because Justin Jefferson and Christian Darrisaw will eat some of that.
Well, Darrisaw's won't kick in until the following year.
Exactly. But it will, it has to be, part of the plan.
Yeah.
He's a top 5 left tackle. Like you're not going to let him walk.
I hear you.
So it has to be part of that plan there. I agree though. That's why I don't care about giving up the futures as long as I don't see it for happening, but as long as it doesn't happen the way that the Panthers happened, where it's literally the #1 pick next year, I don't think I care at all if we give up a first next year, even though we've already given up a second. I really don't care because, like you said, we have that big bankroll, and that number as well is calculating no raise in the cap, which happens every year. So there's going to be even more. And we're going to be able to get those, let's say cornerback is our weakest position again next year, then we're going to have money to sign those big names at corner, or even trade for them. If we can use future draft capital for that, I don't care. Put together the team that you want to put together. Go get your guy. If Drake May is your guy, I don't think there's a price I'm not willing to pay. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right, Brevin, you got closing arguments? Anything on your mind?
Part 1, apologies to any viewers that I may have ruffled the feathers of with my anti-Michael Penix agenda the last couple.
I'm not anti-Michael Penix. I'm not pro Michael Penix though either. So let's put it that way. I'm not, and I prefer him over Bo Nix. Let's put it that way. I don't know if that's saying that much.
Anybody that watches this show is probably has just a rotten opinion of Bo Nix. Every person that comes on this show, I kid you not, Ian, is just like they cannot.
If Bo Nix has one thing, his completion percentage on third down is very good. But he's also older than Sam Howell.
Yeah, so wild. You got any closing arguments, Ian, before we let you go? Get back to that family of yours?
Like I said, we gotta get up to that top 4. Give up whatever. I don't care if it's even 2 future firsts. I know I'm maybe in a small boat there. I don't care. Get your guy. This is a top 3 kind of quarterback class that it just seems different. These top 3 guys, they just seem different. It doesn't seem like the Trevor Lawrence top 3 quarterback class. Like it really feels like each one of these guys could be a superstar, not just a good quarterback too. Like I think that was the hope with Trey Lance, for instance, in that class. You were projecting a lot, and it doesn't feel like you're projecting with these guys. It feels like they're already pretty close to there. So that's why I think you just got to go all in. And like you mentioned, I think both the Commanders and the Patriots have way more holes than we do. So they'll definitely listen to 4 first-round picks. I think they should be listening to 3. 3 first-round picks for that pick, including one that's, just outside the top 10, is not something to scoff at, even if it's for a quarterback that, you're looking at potentially. But I feel like those teams are setting up, if they draft one of those quarterbacks, they're kind of setting them up to fail a little bit because there is nothing around them. Whereas the Vikings don't have that problem. They are set up to succeed here, not only with all the players around them, but with our coaching staff.
Amen. All right, Ian, why don't you let me know sometime right after the draft, whether it's a Saturday night or a regular old night. We will reconvene here and chat and see if all of this came true. Brevin, next Saturday, you and I will talk to Thomas Sullivan, who is a very boisterous Vikings fan. He has not been on this show yet. I can't believe it. All right, Ian, once again, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time. All right?
Have a good one, guys.
Yep, take it easy. Later.